Hello everyone. Today I am going to be doing a what I would have done segment for this Thursday, and I figured for this particular what I would have done Thursday, I thought it would be a good idea to start with something that a lot of people I think in the movie-going community are familiar with, and something that a lot of the movie-going community seems to criticize or make fun of. And this film, as you can see by the title, is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, this is technically, in case you haven't heard of it, the fourth installment of the Indiana Jones films. There were 3 previous films. And this one happens to be the one that people like to openly criticize because they feel it does not resemble any of the other previous films. Although I think at times it tries to, and I think it does come across that way, that it is trying to get some of these things out. It seems that like a lot of the other parts that they left out that were important didn't get put in, and there seemed to be some stuff that was changed around that I felt was just really odd for an Indiana Jones movie. And this particular video is intended to sort of discuss those aspects and to kind of bring forth to the table what I would have done. Now, from all of the other videos where I did talk about what I would have done, this one is a little bit different in that this was sort of one of those films where it almost didn't feel necessary to make, because already you had 3 of these films that came out that sort of had this traditional formula where it was about this guy named Indiana Jones who would go on these adventures and solve these mysteries that surrounded particular ancient legends, from the Holy Grail to the Ark of the Covenant. So really it almost seemed unnecessary to make this film. So I almost have to put it in a different category, in that if what I would have done, my first option would be not to have made this film. Because it's sort of unnecessary in the sense that it's not trying to touch in on anything new. It's not trying to give you anything that would have provided substance to the trilogy that was already there. So really, I feel like that this film wasn't really necessary to be made, except for maybe the purpose of maybe making money and getting people to think, oh, it's Indiana Jones, so it must be a good movie, right? But I mean, I do know that the original trilogy has its flaws. Again, it's a very action-packed entertainment sort of blockbuster type film, except a good blockbuster type film where it's about adventure. You know, you can lose yourself a bit in what's going on, but at the same time there was this practicality to the trilogy that really made it sort of stand out in the fact that they used all these practical effects. Now, what you have to understand is that the Indiana Jones films, for the most part, I believe, came out in the 80s, and then this film comes out in the 2000s. And when you want to put Indiana Jones back on the map, it's kind of hard to do that when you've waited like 20-something odd years to do so. Especially considering the fact the main lead that played Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, is so much older. This guy is not in the shape that he was in, you know, those 20 years back. I mean, he's just not, and I don't think he would be really prepared for this kind of a film if they wanted to bring back the Indiana Jones saga. Like, really, it's really difficult to it's just really difficult to do. And even Steven Spielberg said way off in the beginning, I didn't really want to make this film. He even says that in like the interviews that he's had. You know, he said, I didn't really want to do it, but I did it anyway. So it's, when you have a director that says that, it's kind of off-putting, and it just kind of shows you the level of quality that ended up being produced and that ended up resulting being this film. So I think audience members, in particular those who've grown up with the trilogy, their goal was to probably get out of this film a sense of nostalgia and feel like that they're back into that time period. But when the original trilogy came out, but it's hard to do that when the actors are already so old, and the directors too are already so old that they have a different mentality when it comes to filmmaking. And this film, I think, just ended up being a little bit of a cluttered mess. It's not so bad as maybe as maybe some of the nostalgia critics reviews, like those films. It's maybe not that bad. I mean, I think there were aspects that you can see that Spielberg was trying to make a film, but really it was almost unnecessary to begin with. Whereas with all the other films that I've previously done dealing with this segment, from Avatar to Star Wars and such, those I feel like could have had potential but didn't really bring that full potential out within the films. But this film, it was almost like you already had your trilogy. You already had your great pieces of art. Why not, you know, just leave them be and just let them be a trilogy? But I guess for whatever reason, Spielberg just said, hey, I'm gonna go for it and make it, see what happens. And what I think ended up happening was just a little cluttered mess, and you can kind of see from when you watch the film, like, it does feel a little odd and out of place for an Indiana Jones movie. And I think that's what a lot of people got mad at, was just because it didn't feel like Spielberg brought back that nostalgia that so many people kind of grew up with and admired. So that would have been my first choice, not to even make this film. I mean, the other films I could see maybe somebody trying to make something out of it, but this film is just like, it's already been a trilogy, it's already been established, there's really no point. So that's the first thing that I would have done, is just not have made it in the first place. But if I did have to make it, and try to figure out something, then I'm going to kind of address the aspects that have made this film a little bit of a just a cluttered mess, and just kind of go through the steps that I would have taken to maybe make it a little bit more tolerable, because it's really hard to kind of explain this film anyway, because there were a lot of parts that really just confused me. But let's talk about the main plot point here of this entire movie that did not exist in any other Indiana Jones film, and that was this sci-fi aspect dealing with aliens. Now, I wouldn't actually mind if they had an Indiana Jones film with aliens. I kind of understand the premise in that it's set in the 1950s, and we were getting into sort of the Red Scare. We were getting into, I believe there was a lot of hype for, like, sci-fi during that time period. I think there was a lot of this kind of culture that was going around, and it kind of makes sense into, okay, maybe this is why we would put aliens in it. But I really felt it was almost unnecessary, because you already got Russians. Why not just have it just be Russians? Just have Russians be the antagonists here. Like, you don't need to add in these aliens that really don't contribute anything to this plot. I mean, these aliens, you don't even understand. I mean, I don't even understand. I mean, if somebody is a super genius who understands what these aliens contribute to really this movie, please let me know, because I'm so confused. Like, at the end, when there's this one guy who knows a lot about the Crystal Skull, which the Crystal Skull, in case you don't know and you haven't seen the movie, it's basically an alien head skull. And apparently you can use this as like a mind control machine, so to speak. It's designed to mess with your mind. And the Russians want to use this against the Americans, obviously, because the Russians, during this time period, really had that mentality, mainly the Russian government here. I'm not talking about the Russian people, but the government had this mentality of, yeah, we want to be the next great superpower of the world. And that scared a lot of people during the time period. But at the same time, I don't see why they needed to incorporate the aliens. I would have really scrapped that, because they're trying to combine two genres. Okay, you've got sci-fi, which is aliens over here, and then you got adventure, which is right over here. How do you combine those things and make it work? I think the aliens made the plot more complicated, and therefore a cluttered mess, and you don't understand what they contribute to the story. Like, all they contribute is the fact that they have this crystal skull who's somehow a mind-controlling device. Like, literally, that's all you get from really the aliens. Like, you know really nothing about the aliens until the way end. And then at the way end, it's not even clear as to what side the aliens are on, like what these aliens are all about. Why did they, you really just start asking yourself questions and going, why did they do this? What was the point? I don't understand the point. And I think that's what I had an issue with the aliens, is I didn't understand the point of the alien, of it being a mind controlling device that had to deal with aliens. Why couldn't it have just been a simple stone that, you hold it up and then you can control whoever's mind you want to, or something like that? Why did it have to be this whole other plot point to aliens that doesn't really amount to anything? That I didn't really understand. I kind of understand the whole Aztec theory, and I don't know, they have some weird stuff on History Channel, even though I don't watch it, but I just flip on the channel and then it's talking about, how Aztecs were, visited by aliens, and just this really random stuff. It almost seems like they pulled it out of the History Channel or some sci-fi channel where you have no idea what's really going on and how it all makes sense and everything. So really, it didn't seem like that they did this out of their own minds, but they got it from something else. It almost feels that way. And it doesn't amount to anything. And that's what I think I had a real issue with the aliens, is that you could have just scrapped it completely and it wouldn't have done anything for the story. So yeah, I think them trying to combine two genres together doesn't really work, especially when the other genre, which is sci-fi, doesn't really amount to anything. And you don't really... With the other films, I felt like you could get this, oh, okay, this is what it was all leading up to. This is the, this is the climax, this is the conclusion. With this one, I felt so, I just felt like, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on right now. Okay, they're like giving her knowledge and that's killing her. I don't, like at the end when Cate Blanchett, who plays the villain, is being sucked in by this one alien who's suddenly, or all these aliens who suddenly become one alien. It doesn't make any sense. That's the problem. It just doesn't make any sense. Had they taken the whole alien aspect out, it would have been, I think, a lot stronger. Because that whole alien thing, I think, just makes it way, way more confusing. Another thing that it seems like a lot of people, shake their fists at is the fact that it relies on special effects and not on practical effects, because the earlier Indiana Jones movies always relied on practical effects more than they did these special computer graphical effects. I understand this point. I think it would have probably done justice more to the people who liked Indiana Jones and who would want to see another Indiana Jones film to obviously use more practical effects than the computer stuff. And I don't see how using computer effects makes it any better. In fact, it just makes it look so much more goofy. Like at one point where I believe her name's Marion, the one who's driving their car during an action sequence, she just is driving, and then all of a sudden, the car hits the branch, and then the branch just flips back. Like it's just so out there, and it's not that the other Indiana Jones films did not have things that were kind of out there. Yeah, there's a little bit of a suspension from reality, but this one I felt had so many, and it was just so noticeable. And it's just not just the tree thing. It's the famous fridge scene that everybody talks about. That one fridge where Indiana Jones goes into a fridge and he's basically in a nuclear testing facility, and they're setting a bomb off, and he's like, oh, I gotta hide, and he goes and finds a fridge in they set up this like whole fake town, and he thinks, okay, I'll just go into a fridge and maybe I'll survive. And it's just so outlandish and ridiculous that it just suspends you from reality even further. I felt like that the fridge was just, and then on top of that, him being still so close to where the nuclear bomb was set off, I just thought, isn't he gonna die from like the poison? And it really, I mean, it makes for like a cool effect from him walking up to where the nuclear bomb exploded, but it doesn't hold water to reality, and it feels so out there. And then not only do we get the tree branch thing and the fridge, there's also the people who are in dirt. There's at one point where you'll see Aztecs, just Aztecs, because they're going to find where they need to put the crystal skull, and there's Aztecs, and they just come out of nowhere from this pile of dirt, and I don't know. I think that one could have been offered with like an explanation, like maybe they have like secret little catacombs where they go in, or I don't know. But that was just kind of a little odd to me too. But what really gets me is not only do they go down like one waterfall like straight down at one point in I believe it's a car or some kind of automobile. But they go down a waterfall, like straight down, and none of them fall out. No. Everybody stays completely intact. And this just doesn't happen once. No, it's not like in Temple of Doom where they just have that one big fall and then boom, okay. Alright, they're on solid ground now. Okay. But they have 3 of these. And each one is like... And they still stay inside their car. And then they just kind of walk out like, that was really... that was crazy, but... Not a broken bone, nothing. Like, to just come out like completely intact. Nobody dies. It's just so insane. Like, I mean, I understand, like, the other films did have their little crazy moments, but these just stand out like a sore thumb. I mean, it's just so out there. It's just the fact that they just didn't die and that they stayed completely intact, and then until the last waterfall, okay, yeah, we should let them just swim out now. You know, they shouldn't be in their vehicle anymore after 2 waterfalls. And these waterfalls are pretty big too. It's not like, you know, there's just these like small little waterfalls. You know, these are like big, gigantic waterfalls, and it just doesn't make any sense. I think I should go back a little bit to Indiana Jones's character, in that I don't think that they made his character, they didn't change his character to the point where it was insulting, but he really wasn't the center of attention anymore in this movie. It seems like they had to really balance out everybody else, and that they couldn't really focus in on Indiana Jones. And a lot of almost every other film focuses in on Indiana Jones, and then maybe 1 or 2 side characters, or a couple of side characters that offer him help or assistance, but not to the point where basically Indiana Jones takes a back seat and lets everybody else sort of do the fighting for him. Now, it's not to say that he doesn't fight in this movie. He does fight, and I think Harrison Ford was trying. It's just Harrison Ford is too old now to do these things. And to do practical stunt work might have been a lot more challenging for him. So I could maybe understand why Spielberg tried to use special effects. But even at the same time, still, it feels like Indiana Jones is in the backseat, like, yeah, I'm driving the car now, and I'm going to let Shia LaBeouf, who ends up being his supposed son, or, well, who ends up, yeah, technically being his son, you know, go off and fight and do whatever, and fight the villain and all this stuff. You don't feel like that there's a final confrontation in this movie, because the villain is sort of just defeated. You know, it really doesn't feel like it's focused in so much on Indiana Jones. It's just Indiana Jones and everybody else. And I think that has to just do with the fact that they waited too long to try to make another film. If Spielberg had decided maybe, like, in the early 90s, like, hey, you know what, I should maybe make another Indiana Jones film, then it might have been more reasonable. Or if he decided, hey, I should probably, you know, try to do one again, I would have been probably a little bit more open to it, because you probably could have done a lot more with Harrison Ford. But the thing is you can't do a lot when he's not physically capable of doing a ton. And I think that really just has to do with his age. I mean, it's nothing to say that he's bad because of his age. It just has to do with the fact that, you know, he's not capable really of doing these kinds of films anymore. And it's sad, but he's not the same as he was in the 80s. Like, you just can't reverse time, you know? And I feel like that was a really contributing factor into why this film didn't really hold a candle to all of the other films. And I think that has to just do with the fact that it was just put off to the side until Spielberg decided, okay, I guess I have to do it. If everybody wants me to do it, even though I don't even know if he was even pressured by anybody to do this film. So it's really all just comes down to those, I think, really basic points. The fact that they were trying to mix genres with sci-fi and adventure, even though Indiana Jones films did not focus in at all on sci-fi and were just more about adventure, and then maybe some, mysticism in there with the different artifacts, but really not focused in on aliens and alien sci-fi aspects. So that's what really deters it, and I don't think it brings out an advantage to the film, because it just makes it more confusing, because I just don't understand what's going on. So I think that was a major issue, was just the fact that they decided to mix these genres somehow together and think that they could somehow be compatible with in an Indiana Jones movie. Practical effects instead of the computer graphics, I think, would have served this film also really well. Instead of trying to go with what a lot of other films were doing during this early stage, which was experimenting with these kinds of computer graphics and trying to suspend us even further from reality. Because again, you'll see films too, like Return of the Mummy, and you'll notice these things too, and how it's really trying to push these special effects, and then at some points, the suspension from reality goes even further away. And I just think it really would suck the audience out of what the traditional films stood for. So if you have these other films, it's best if you focus in on making sure that it stays true to what it is, and it's an adventure film. So I think using those practical effects would have served the movie well. And just cutting all of these scenes that really were just over the top, and from the fridge to the waterfalls to the sheer oddness of the aliens. If they had focused in on making it a lot more grounded and a lot more simplistic, like, they didn't need to, like, Indiana Jones's plots are not really all that complex. They're just Indiana Jones trying to find a particular artifact, and in the process getting involved with bad guys, and maybe meeting some people along the way. That's really all Indiana Jones is. It's not trying to be this overly overdone film. And I believe my television just started going for whatever reason, and I'm gonna go check what's going on, and I'll be right back. So sorry, I should have left that completely out. But nonetheless, back to Indiana Jones. For the most part, I feel like that had they done these things that were more geared towards what the original Indiana Jones trilogy was trying to do, they would have probably come up with a more successful product. I think, though, the aspect of the fact that it is it has been such a long time since there was an Indiana Jones movie, it's really hard to try to bring out the acting in someone. And it's not to say that Harrison Ford didn't really play what he was. It's just you could tell that this Indiana Jones is a completely different stage of life and not what he was in the original trilogy. And I think, it just all comes down to age, the fact that they waited so long, and then suddenly to decide out of the blue, heck, I want to make this. It's really, I think, what's the biggest point of what makes this film not as successful is just the fact that Indiana Jones as a character is not really focused in on so much, and he's not really the hero that we know in the other films. And I think that's what made this film so hard for people to, I guess, get into, was just this whole aspect of it being so far out from where the original trilogy was. And really, a lot of filmmaking has to do with timing. Like, if you don't time it out right, you're not going to get as much of a successful product. And I think this really shows, if you don't, invest the time to make something, it's maybe best if you just leave the things the way they were. And if I would have done anything out of this entire film, the first thing that always pops into my mind is I probably wouldn't have made it. All of the other films that I've done so far, I could see myself trying to make something out of it. But I think really what just nails this film in the coffin is just the fact that it's just been so long since the original trilogy came out. And the fact that the style of filmmaking has changed, and the fact that we are getting these kinds of films where they seem a little phoned in, and this film is definitely no exception. So it was just really, it was odd. just very odd for me. It was, and I've seen it a couple of times trying to understand anything that's come out of it. And when I saw the original trilogy, I went, yeah, I can see why people would be mad at this one. But overall, I mean, I'm sure there's people who still like this film and don't see the flaws as any issue. But for me, I felt like that this film was almost a little unnecessary. It was almost like, we already had this great trilogy, there was no point in trying to make this film. Whereas you could make an argument, it would have been cool to see, Darth Vader's story or whatever for Star Wars. Or it would have been cool to see blue people from Avatar. Or it would be cool to see a third Spider-Man movie. But with this film, where you already have a trilogy that basically sums up Indiana Jones as a character, and if you're not, and if you don't continuously try to make something out of that trilogy and wait until 20 years later, it's just not going to come across as strong. And I think that just shows. And it's a simple fact, but it's kind of the truth. But yeah, my first choice would be I wouldn't have made it. But my second choice, had I had to make it, I think relying on these more traditional aspects would have made the film a lot stronger. But again, it's Indiana Jones is not the same as he was 20 years ago. So it's hard to bring that character back unless you bring in another actor. But you can't replace Harrison Ford with anyone else. So it's really it really just wasn't the time for it, and it wasn't really necessary. So yeah, I think that's really all I can say about it. But again, I am more than happy to hear anybody's opinion about this. But for the most part, I think had they focused in more on these traditional aspects that made the trilogy so well recognized and praised, then they might have come up with something better. But my first choice would have been not to even bother. But I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns, be more than happy to answer them. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. So take care, and bye-bye.